Welcome back to Madman Review. When most of us think about cops, we are thinking traffic stops, neighborhood patrols, maybe DUI arrests. But every now and then, things get real intense real fast, which is what this video is all about. The deadliest law enforcement shootouts in history. And trust me, these stories aren't anything like what you see in the movies. Hollywood movies have gotten really good in the past couple of decades, but they've got nothing on the raw, unpredictable, and honestly, gut-wrenching moments that some officers have gone through. Now, we're diving into these cases not only for the action, but also to get a grip on what went down and why. And while we're at it, let's take a moment to remember and honor the brave officers in these shootouts who had to make the ultimate sacrifice. Their loss is a reminder of the risks they took for our safety, and we owe them a debt of gratitude for their dedication and service to the nation. So, without further ado, let's begin. Number 5, 1993, Waco Siege. Back in 1993, something wild went down in Axtell, Texas. You've probably heard of it, or at least seen a documentary. The Branch Davidians. This religious cult were minding their business at their compound when Uncle Sam got a bit worried. Why? Word on the street was that David Koresh, the cult's leader, was stockpiling a ton of weapons. And not just a few hunting rifles, we're talking a massive collection of about 250 firearms, from semi-auto rifles to hand grenades. Sounds like something straight out of an action movie, right? So on that fateful day, February 28th of 1983, the ATF sent in a squad of around 80 agents. Their mission? Arrest Koresh and search the massive 77-acre compound. But as with any high-stakes situation, there's always two sides to the story. According to the feds, it was the Davidians who kicked off the shootout. But ask any surviving Davidian, and they'll tell you it was the ATF who got trigger-happy first. When the smoke cleared that day, the tally was a grim 10 folks down. What followed wasn't a quick resolution, but a long, tense 51-day standoff. What happened was, while the government waited outside, negotiations were ongoing. The FBI did manage to get 44 people to walk out safely during this period. Koresh, being a bit of a talker, was on the horn with the FBI for a whopping 60 hours, spread out over 117 calls. But man, he kept dragging his feet on surrendering. Then came April 19th, a date that'll be forever etched in memory. Tension spiked. The FBI, losing patience, rolled their tanks closer, slinging tear gas into the compound. And then, the unimaginable, a roaring fire consumed the place. Post-blaze, it was a heart-wrenching scene. 75 people, including Koresh, didn't make it out. Among them were innocent kids, some with fatal wounds that still spark debates, and conspiracy theories. There's this one Davidian survivor who even suggested that some of their own took fatal shots to avoid the agony of the flames. Number 4, 1970, Newhall Incident. A small town named Newhall witnessed an event that shook the foundation of U.S. law enforcement in 1970. It was a turning point, prompting a serious overhaul in police training across the country. Why? Well, on April 6, a seemingly routine evening took a harrowing turn that would forever mark the annals of police history. Our story starts with Officers Frago and Gore. These young California Highway Patrol officers were cruising when they got wind of a suspicious car. Someone had supposedly flashed a weapon. They spotted the suspect vehicle and, following protocol, tailed it. They made the call for backup and began the usual stop-and-check procedure. But usual was about to get thrown out the window. As Gore approached the driver, the passenger door burst open. Out jumps this fella, guns blazing. Before anyone could even react, Frago is hit. That guy, later identified as Jack Twinning, wastes no time and downs Gore as well. And as if things weren't chaotic enough, the driver, one Bobby Davis, decides to join the tragic party. The result? Both officers out in a blink. Enter the scene Officers Pence and Allen, responding to the backup call. They race into a scenario no officer ever wants to face. Flying bullets and no clear sight of their fallen comrades. They fight valiantly, but fate's cruel that night, and they too fall. Now, after this intense shootout, Twinning and Davis decided it's time to split. A manhunt ensues, lasting a whopping 9 hours. Twinning, playing his cards wild, takes refuge in a house, briefly taking a resident hostage. Cops close in, using tear gas to force a surrender, but Twinning, he chooses his own exit, ending his life with a shotgun he'd nicked earlier. Davis, on the other hand, faces the music. He's captured, tried, and initially handed a death sentence. But plot twist, California, in a landmark decision in 1972, chucks out the death penalty, so Davis's looming date with a gas chamber morphs into a life sentence. He spends his days in infamous joints like Folsom and Pelican Bay before finally landing in Kern Valley Prison. His life chapter concludes in 2009. Number 3. 1974 SLA Symbionese Liberation Army Shootout. Man, the 70s were wild. You might have heard the Symbionese Liberation Army, or SLA. Yeah, the same crew that snatched newspaper bigshot Patty Hearst. Fast forward to May 17, 1974, and we got a scene straight out of Hollywood. But way too real. The SLA and LAPD, they were gearing up for a showdown that would go down in history. Here's the lowdown. A day before the Big Bang, a couple of SLA members tried to nick some ammo from a store and nearly got nabbed. Their escape van got spotted, which put the heat onto an SLA hideout. Then, an anonymous call rings into the LAPD. It's about some heavily armed dudes at a house. Quick as lightning, we've got over 400 LAPD officers, the FBI, LA County Sheriffs, California Highway Patrol, and even LA Fire Department walking down the block. After some failed attempts to coax the SLA members out, SWAT rolls in with tear gas. The SLA aren't going quiet. They fire back hard. Imagine the scene. Cops with semi-automatic AR-15s, SLA with tricked-out M1 carbines, and homemade grenades flying. It's nuts. 2 hours into this chaos, the hideout is on fire. Probably a stray tear gas canister that blew. As the place turns into a furnace, 3 women bolt. But here's the twist. They ain't even SLA members. One had a wild night, passed out, and woke up to a full-blown firefight. But the real drama? Nancy Ling Perry and Kamala Hall storm out, guns blazing. The police claim they dropped Hall because she aimed a gun, while Perry got double-tapped. Another member dragged Hall back into the flaming house. When the dust and smoke cleared, several SLA folks were dead, from bullets, smoke, or the fire. The chief baddie, Donald DeFreeze, apparently offed himself. Cops found a mini arsenal in the remains. 19 firearms. The total bullet count? A staggering 9,000 rounds. But here's the crazy part. Only the SLA had casualties. Cops, firefighters, and bystanders, all safe. This was no ordinary shootout. It's one of the biggest gunfights in American history. Wild times, for sure. Number 2, 1997 North Hollywood Raid. Let's wind back the clock to February 28, 1997 in sunny North Hollywood. This wasn't a movie set, but rather the backdrop for one of the most intense shootouts in American police history. We had 2 bank robbers, Larry Phillips Jr. and Emil Mataserianu, who looked like they'd stepped straight out of a Hollywood blockbuster, armored up and packing heat like no tomorrow. Morning shoppers and early risers got more than they bargained for at 9:16 a.m. when these 2 made their move on the Bank of America's North Branch. But as they left the bank, cash in tow, the LAPD was there to meet them. Instead of surrendering, what followed was a chaotic dance of bullets, close to 2,000 rounds in all. What made this not just another robbery was the arsenal these guys brought. While the average LAPD officer was armed with 9mm pistols or 38 special revolvers, these robbers weren't playing. We're talking Chinese AK-47 variants, a Bushmaster rifle with a whopping 100-round drum magazine, a Heckler & Koch HK-91 rifle, and a Beretta 92 FS pistol. But the real game changer? They wore homemade body armor, almost like DIY Iron Men. The standard rounds from the cops' guns barely tickled them. SWAT had to roll in with some heavier artillery, but even they struggled against the robbers' armor. The dramatic ending: Phillips, wounded and running low, decided to take his own life with a bullet to the head. Matasariyanu, his car tires were shot out, so he tried to jack a pickup truck, but the cops got to him, landing rounds in his legs. However, it wasn't the bullets that did him in, but the excessive blood loss. This showdown wasn't just another day in LA, it was a game changer. The sheer intensity, the rounds fired, the equipment these robbers had, and the sheer duration of the gunfight made it iconic. Some say around 1,100 rounds came from the bad guys alone, with the police sending back about 650. Whatever the tally, it was a lot of lead in the air. For many, this wasn't just a shootout. It was a wake-up call about what law enforcement might face in the future. Hollywood might be known for its movie magic, but on that day, the action was all too real. Number 1, 1986 Miami-Dade Shootout. Let's hop in the time machine and go back to 1986 Miami-Dade in Florida. It boasts neon lights, flashy cars, and the deadliest law enforcement shootout ever. Yeah, you heard right. This wasn't just some run-of-the-mill cop and robber chase. This was a full-blown Hollywood-worthy action scene that unfortunately happened in real life. Our main bad guys here were William Maddox and Michael Lee Platt. These dudes had rolled into Miami 2 years earlier, supposedly to start a landscaping gig. But underneath the mowing lawns and trimming hedges facade, these guys were all about the adrenaline rush. They had an unhealthy obsession with big guns and fast cars, and before long, they became the main suspects in a string of violent heists. So, on this sunny day in April, right by the Sunnyland Shopping Center, our FBI agents, including the heroes of our story, Benjamin Grogan and Jerry Dove, were tailing these thrill-seekers, trying to keep it down on the low. But things quickly went from 0 to 100 when the suspects took a sharp turn off the highway and parked behind a farm store's drive-thru. It was like a scene straight out of an action flick, and Agent Richard Manautzi decided to amp things up. He tried cornering the bad guys, and boy did that escalate things. Imagine the chaos. 3 FBI cars crashing into the suspect's ride, and instead of surrendering, Maddox and Platt went all out, guns blazing. It was pure mayhem. There were shouts over the radio, "We've got agents down, we need backup." And amidst this chaos, one moment stood out. Agent Edmundo Mireles, even after taking some hits, pulled himself together in a display of pure grit. He stood up, took aim, and went toe-to-toe with the baddies, firing from his shotgun and revolver. Talk about a hero moment. It was his bravery that finally put an end to the madness. When the dust settled, it was a heavy scene. 2 agents had lost their lives, 5 were injured, and only Agent Ronald Reisner walked away without a scratch. This wasn't just another day in the office for the FBI. It was a reality check. The aftermath? The FBI decided they needed some serious upgrades. Their guns weren't cutting it anymore, so they took steps to upgrade their standard-issue sidearms, pushing the 10mm to mainstream status, which ultimately gave birth to cartridges like the .40 Smith & Wesson, the .357 SIG, and the powerful 9x25 Dillon. To sum it up, the Miami-Dade Shootout of '86 wasn't just a tale of guns and heroes. It was a lesson, a game changer, reminding us that even in the land of sun and fun, things can go south real quick.